I sent him back to the lab. I love it. I love it. Fuck it. Let's go with that. I love it. I sent his ass back to the lab to go reevaluate, come up with a better argument. So anyway, all right. So I was on the phone till the wee hours of the morning, okay, arguing with somebody. It wasn't really an argument, it was a discussion. You know, I'm that token black guy that some of the white people that I know that are conservative, or you know, I consider them right of center. You know, they're not really with the whole Tea Party and all that, you know, all that shit that's on the extreme right, Breitbart and everything else. But it definitely affects, you know, how they think and how they process information. Like they hear, you know, that sort of talk, and then, you know, they'll be like, oh, that, you know, that's a good one. And then they'll come, you know, running back to, I'm the test subject. They come running back to me, trying to like run this shit by me and trying to see how I'm going to react to it or respond to it, right? So he came at me with the, you know, talking about, you know, what's, you know, African Americans and all the stuff with the protests and how do I feel and what about reparations for slavery and all this other stuff, right? And again, you know, what a lot of white people like to do is they like to pathologize black people, especially black Americans, and say, well, they're just this way, and therefore they can't be helped because they're just this way, and therefore they're undeserving of any of the corrective shit that needs to be, you know, that needs to happen, right? You know, so we're undeserving of, you know, the follow through on Reconstruction. We're undeserving of the follow through on the Civil Rights Movement, right? So because, you know, they'll go right to the symptom, you know what I mean, as opposed to the root cause. So they'll talk about, well, look at the gang violence and look at the inner cities and poverty and all that stuff. And, you know, black kids don't want to read and they don't want to, you know, graduate and all this other stuff, right? And so, you know, I got to go color by numbers and break the shit down, namely about, you know, things like the fact that, you know, black people, we had communities that were burned down to the ground. And now you end up with this situation where, you know, you got a whole generation or multiple generations that basically saw, you know, black people do all the song and dance that they did for white people in the 1960s, and they ain't got nothing to show for it. You know, and they saw blatantly white people not accept them, you know, not be, you know, integrated into society. Black people still disproportionately poor, just as they were coming out of slavery, just as they were in the 1960s. And so you get a lot of black people that say, fuck it. You know, I'm like, why am I going to sit around and, you know, kiss white people's ass and do all this shit and, you know, operate by their standards and everything. You know, you know, there's you don't get rewarded for the shit. Not even that black people should be, you know, having to operate like that, like trying to get a pat on the head from their white parent or something like that. But I'm saying all this stuff like, why can't you just be, you know, good American citizens like us good white folks and behave and all this other stuff, is it because it didn't amount to anything, right? And then you have the whole community aspect problem. This is why people respect what goes on in the streets. Yeah, you can talk about right, wrong, or indifferent, whatever goes on in the streets, but at the end of the day, you know, it's respected because that's how they operate independently, given the situation and circumstances that they've been given. You know, the whole idea of, you know, having to go out here and get all of your opportunities, you know, from another group, you know, that doesn't sit well with black people, just like it wouldn't sit well with white folks. You know, and again, when you see people doing all that stepping and fetching and they still ain't got shit to show for it, oh, that really rubs people the wrong way. Right? So, and I'm saying that's both a problem externally and internally. This is one of the reasons why, like, when I see that shit with the teenagers that beat up that woman in New York, and they looking for him, and, you know, they stole her purse, and then, like, she tried to take it back and they punched her in the face. You know, I have a different view on that. You know, now that I have an understanding of, you know, what wasn't done or wasn't attempted or done effectively in terms of, you know, still having children, but not having any opportunities for them. As I said before, if you got no opportunities for the young men, they will cannibalize the community, I don't care whether it's a black community, a white community, whatever. If you don't have opportunities for the young men, if you don't help them, on their path to being, contributing members of society, if you don't give them that proper orientation with the tools and the resources to do so, and you paint this fantasy picture, all that's going to do is cause frustration. If you just paint this fantasy picture of, this is what it is to be a man, and then you see to it that they don't have the necessary tools to even be that. And then all that creates is a burning desire for individuals to be productive, but not to the benefit of society. So, instead of, since I can't go the legitimate route, I'll go the illegal route. And then, the illegal route is obviously selling drugs and doing all that other stuff because they still want to have the material wealth, that are symbols of being a productive member of society. Like when you look at drug dealers, they want the same, luxury items and vehicles and properties just as the legitimate men do. All right. So if you create the idea that, that this is what it is to be a man, but then you don't give people the necessary tools, they will find an alternative path to get that. And that's where all the illegal activity comes into play. So okay, where was I going with this? About the young men and the identity. Okay, so we were talking about, the black kids in the city, all that other stuff, and basically, and I already caught on to it from the go. He was trying to pathologize, black youth and how they act and respond and everything. And then he was like, well, if you look at Nigerians, right? And this is the, compare black population to black population to say that, African Americans are just fucked up, right? But you know what that leaves out? It leaves out what has been done to African Americans, what white supremacy has done to African Americans, the conditions and situations and circumstances that African Americans have been put in. Right. And so what I pointed out to him is I was like, it's the same thing, just like that British guy that made that video, why are Hindus successful? Right. Notice he said Hindus. He did not say Pakistanis. You know why? Because in the UK, Pakistanis run the heroin game. Hell, they got an issue with Pakistanis going back to Pakistan in order to form gangs in Pakistan, and form this link between Pakistan and the UK to sell their, heroin throughout Europe. Now, why is that? Why is that? I'm saying India and Pakistan, people say, oh, well, it's because of Islam and, oh, no, it ain't that. It ain't that. Again, when you come to America, okay, the shit is not even Googleable. I'm gonna make a word up. Googleable. It's not even Googleable. Okay? There's no such thing as Pakistani gangs in the United States. There's no such thing. When you watch what's that TV show that comes on MSNBC at like 3 o'clock in the morning, Locked Up, you don't see no Pakistanis in there. Hell, you don't even see anybody from Southeast Asia in there. You see blacks, a bunch of whites that are like your Aryan Brotherhood, white supremacists and shit, and some Hispanics. That's all you see. You do not see any Southeast Asians in prison. Hell, you don't even see homeless. When's the last time you saw a homeless Asian person? I mean, seriously. You can go in Chinatown and you won't see a homeless Asian person. It's rare. It's a rare occurrence. Okay? So Pakistanis, so when people, I hear all this stuff when people pathologize Pakistanis in the UK, and I'm like, but how come when they come to America, it's not the same situation? Because they're treated differently? You're still talking about first generation when you talk about Pakistani. They still, unlike African Americans, they didn't have their language stripped from them, and their culture, and their religion, and their hierarchies, and their orientations. They didn't have that ripped from them. Okay, you growing up up on a Pakistani right now, today in America, ab kiya hal hai, you know what I'm saying? And that's the greeting. That's how they communicate with each other. They're right there in the culture. You see what I'm saying? Same thing in the UK. You can say the same thing to a Pakistani in the UK, know exactly what you're talking about, and common greeting. But here, let me park this because I want to finish this video before I get my food. But I'm saying This is the situation. So when people bring up Nigerians, or bring up whatever Africans they want to talk about, I'm like, oh, amazing, right? Because I'm saying Pakistanis in the UK and Pakistanis in America cut from the same cloth, but yet the outcomes are starkly different. And I'm like, and it's amazing at how the difference in treatment is overlooked. And I'm talking treatment like generationally, like where you'll have Pakistanis in the UK, they grow up in poverty, they grow up in situations without and whatnot, where in the United States, and I don't know, maybe it's because the immigration is different, right? Maybe in the UK they're less selective than the United States. I don't know what the specifics are. I mean, people could throw up all different type of, multiple factors. Okay. But in America, the Pakistanis, they have businesses, gas stations, bodegas. They're just essentially business class. Business class, you'll see a lot of them in healthcare as doctors and physicians. That's what you're going to see. But in UK, I go online, I type in UK, Pakistani, it's either talking about Muslim rape gangs or heroin or some other gang affiliated something that's going on with Pakistan. You never hear about that in America. Now, when I go over to the Nigerians or any other African group, and the white people want to come through and they want to say, oh, well, how come you're not like these other black people? First off, that argument right there eliminates the idea and the concept of black pathology. Because if it's all about, well, black people are just like, well, then you can't use another black population. Like, in other words, you eliminate one argument by presenting the other. Okay, in other words, if black people are just inherently inferior and have all this pathology, then that should be the way it is across the board. Once you present Nigerians and you're trying to use that as a card or a cudgel to beat down African Americans, then the pathology of black people has been erased, as Nigerians have they're like the number one group in terms of immigrants that have PhDs, right? I remember reading this like a while ago. I don't know if that's exactly the phrase, but I know they have a high percentage of PhDs, right? Black people, black population. What's the difference? Well, people can say neocolonialism in Africa exists, but I'm saying Nigerians were able to maintain and preserve many more aspects of their culture and their orientation and their hierarchies and their structure, especially their family, way more than African Americans. And be it that most of the Nigerians or the Nigerian Americans are first generation. They're first generation or second generation. You're not really going to see a whole bunch of Nigerian Americans that are so African American that then they start slipping and falling into, the African American, behavior, thought process, and everything else. Right? So it is the environment that creates the disparity, the environment of the American system of white supremacy that creates the disparity. Just like white supremacy, when it comes to the Pakistanis in the UK, create the disparity as to why you see a whole bunch of Pakistanis in the prison industrial complex in the UK, but you don't see that in the United States. I mean, go ahead, Google it. Pakistani gangs, United States. You're not going to find any articles on the shit. Or the articles will lead you back to the UK. It's like, no, I said United States. It's still giving you shit about the UK and Pakistani gangs in the UK. It's not a conversation in the United States about Pakistani gangs. And so, it's like, I sent him back to the lab. He was like, damn, I'm going to have to think about this one. And that's pretty much how we ended the conversation. Because I'm like, if you're saying, oh, well, black Americans, y'all just don't have it like that. And with Nigerians, they come with a different culture and this, that, and the third. Maybe because it wasn't as heavily disrupted as African Americans, family structure and orientations and hierarchies and culture and language and religion and everything else has been, disrupted. or brainwashed, with all this Eurocentricity and white Jesus and all this other stuff and self-hate complexes. I'm not saying that Nigerians don't have that. They most certainly do. But again, their hierarchies are still intact, even when it comes to the whole gender war that we got going on in America, where it's like, black men, struggle and fail to provide for the black women while living and operating in this, white dominated system. In Africa, when the black woman, when she goes to court, she sees a black judge. When she, asks for a police officer, it's a black cop. When she goes to school and she's being taught, it's a black teacher or a black male professor. You see? So they grow up by default with a whole different orientation about their men and what their men's role are in the society and relative to them and the orientation and all that other stuff. Now, granted, there's some Nigerian American women, they come over here and they see all the ghetto ratchetness and the Megan Thee Stallion and all that other stuff, and they're starting to get corrupted because it's like we're corrupted, and then they come over and then they get it corrupted, and then it fucks shit up, and then they bring that shit back to Africa or to try to bring it back to the community. And that's where some of the African and African American animosity, comes from. You know what I'm saying? Do not bring akata into my home. That type of shit. No akatas, right? So, that's where a lot of that shit comes from. But I had to send them back to the lab on that one. I was like, it's real interesting that you go, oh well, again, in one breath, it's black pathology. Black people are just inherently fucked up. But yet, when he wants to slam, again, this is talking out of both sides of his face. When he wants to slam African Americans, then he brings up a population that is the model African minority, right? The model minority of Africans, which are Nigerians. And I'm like, oh, well, okay, so I guess you can't pathologize all black people. Okay, well, what's the difference between African Americans and Nigerians? What is the cultural difference? What is the orientation? Why are we different from them? Okay, we were enslaved. Then we went through Jim Crow. Then we went through, all the stuff that induces an inferiority complex in African Americans. From the doll test, which doll is the good doll? Which doll is the bad doll? All that shit that they went through in order to tear down Board of Education and whatnot. And again, not saying that not Africans don't go through that, because again, there is this whole media globalization of the system of white supremacy, and everything that white man has is better, and the white man's ice is colder and everything. There's a lot of Africans that got inferiority complexes about shit like that. They fucked up, but they're not as fucked up as African Americans. Not when it comes to that. Not when they can look around and they see an all African country, and they see, all African community, and they see black people doing things and whatnot in their own country. African Americans, because of the situation and circumstances they've been placed in, they don't see that. It goes back to what Freeway Rick Ross said. The successful black people that he saw growing up before he became a drug dealer were other drug dealers. That's what he saw. When you want to talk about the deindustrialization of America and which is, disproportionately affected the black community, things like redlining, blockbusting, being denied FHA loans, all these sorts of things, the dumping of drugs in the black community, eminent domain, the 1956 Highway Commission Act that basically destroyed a lot of the business centers of black communities all across America. It's like every time the black community trying to adjust and adapt, it's just like, oh, here comes the white man with some more fucking shit. Here comes the white man with another wrecking ball, Like I said, they always, black people, they never did this, and they never had functioning communities, and this, that, and the third. But yet, how is it that you burn down communities, functioning communities that you claimed never existed? How is that possible? How do you burn down Rosewood and it never existed? How do you burn down Tulsa and it never existed? You know what I'm saying? How do you burn down Elaine, Arkansas, but it never existed? You see? Wilmington, North Carolina, but it never existed, right? They burn all this shit down, but it never existed. Black people never. See, these are the myths and the lies that white people put out. Do Nigerians have to go through that? I mean, I don't know what they teach in Nigerian schools and all that other shit, but it most certainly isn't the type of bullshit that you hear, in America about, Africa, where they tell you basically Africa's nothing but a bunch of primitive savages living in fucking mud huts and shit. That's what they teach you in America. Africa was a dark continent and nothing happened, until the white man blessed the shores of Africa and then there was slavery and okay, we're going to skip over that because we feel guilty about that. We don't talk about that. Okay, there's slavery and then, civil rights movement, suffrage, black people got the right to vote and all this other shit and then Martin Luther King and that's it. Right? Oh, they'll teach you about Europe until your fucking eyes fucking water. You know what I mean? You can name all the countries in Europe and Germany and Austria, and then they'll tell you about how the countries changed and Czechoslovakia is no more, and then Russia and Moscow and fucking, and breaking all these countries and all the little wars that they had and World War I and World War II. When truth be told, actually, Europe had way more wars, but they don't even talk about that. It's like Napoleonic War, World War I, World War II, and then that's pretty much fucking it, right? But that's what they teach you in school. But, you ask, black kids, you say, where is Botswana? I don't fucking know. You know what I'm saying? Like where is, the Gold Coast? Where is Senegal? I don't fucking know. You know what I mean? Like they don't know where any of the damn countries are. What are the tributaries? Where are the rivers? What is the source of this river? Nothing. Just they don't know anything about Africa except for the negativity that white people project. I mean, what's crazy? Even the white guy that I was talking to basically said the same thing. He said because we all get the same information. The shithole that is Africa is the same information I got is the same information that he got. Same information. That it was just nothing there. There's a bunch of primitives, a bunch of mud, straw huts and shit, and people just, in poverty and all this stuff, just there's no roads. It's fucked up. But obviously, Nigerians, that's not the type of education about Africa and ideas and concepts of self that Nigerians get. That's not what they're teaching in Nigerian school. I mean, hell, I didn't even know about the Biafra War until I was 27, something like that. I didn't even learn about that shit until later. Like I went on YouTube. I was like, what is this war that they had in Nigeria? And then I heard about all the stuff and then the assassination of leaders from European powers and shit like that. I'm like, oh, look at this. Again, not to say that Africans weren't affected by Europe. They most certainly were. Neocolonialism is different when you're living in the belly of the beast. It's one thing when you're being affected by outside forces and whatnot, but yet at the end of the day, even if it's puppets that are in place, you still see a black face up there. You're not growing up with an inferiority complex. Going back to why Barack Obama being president of the United States was so important for people, even though the man's biracial. But motherfuckers was reaching and grabbing for it because that's the closest thing that they can grab. Shit, well, fuck it, we'll take it. Right? But you notice, even with white people, with their fragility, despite the fact that they had, 44 previous presidents? Right? No. Right? 44? No, 43 previous presidents. Right? Barack Obama got up there and white people, they lost their shit. They were feeling some type of way. It's like, damn, it's like, not only is the man biracial, but damn, you done had, 43 previous white male presidents. Damn, is this shit that much of a problem? And yes, it is that much of a problem because we're white, goddammit. We're white men. We should always be in power. That's how it should be. Right? Right, but notice, they'll sit there and say, oh, we're all Americans, we're all Americans, America is a nation under God, indivisible, all that shit, right? They tell you all that shit. That's what you learn in school, with, putting your hand over your heart and saying the Pledge of Allegiance and everything else, right? But yet, when the president's not white, They immediately go into, oh, well, he's only catering and serving to white people and this, that, and the third. When if you ask black people felt like Barack Obama didn't do enough for black people. He kept black people at arm's length. You see? Because he had to appease all the white folks that would jump down his throat the minute he looked at, Barack Obama was being divisive. I tried to have that whole thing with Henry Louis Gates and the cop that arrested him in his own house. And that cop basically told Obama to go fuck himself. He's not apologizing. I did my job. God, there ain't no nigger going to tell me what to do. That bullshit. So like white people, man, y'all some gaslighting, intellectually dishonest mofos, man. It's like, it's old and it's tired at this point. You know what I mean? But black people definitely have to have the tools to counter a lot of y'all bullshit ass narratives. I mean, just trying to find, that's your ultimate go-to. They're just like that card. That they're just like that. Just completely ignoring the situation, conditions, circumstances that white people have created in order to maintain socio-economic and political power. They want to completely ignore it, just completely ignore all that stuff. And I'm like, you're going to compare African Americans to Nigerians when Nigerians haven't been subject to what African Americans have been subject to underneath this, American system of white supremacy. Keep in mind that America, not just the American system of white supremacy, but before 1965, it was the American system of apartheid. People forget that America was a country that existed underneath a system of apartheid. It was no different than South Africa. And what you saw with Nelson Mandela and all the shit that we remember. I mean, the first time I was exposed to that shit was Lethal Weapon. Lethal Weapon with Mel Gibson. And we all found out later on, how he really felt about black people, with his girlfriend, when he thought his girlfriend was fucking with a black dude, getting raped. I hope you get raped by a pack of niggas. A pack of niggas. I didn't even know niggas ran in packs. I was like, we do? In packs? Really? A pack of niggas, like we're a bunch of rabid fucking dogs and shit. And I'm saying, he was getting with Danny Glover's daughter in the movie and all. I mean, it was like fucking nuts. It was nuts how they set that shit up. Like Mel Gibson was the most anti-racist person in the world. And come to find out, that's how he really feels, right? But that's how a lot of white folks are. Secretly, that's how they really feel. They just got to be caught or recorded or whatever, and then they get exposed, and then it's like, oh, see, we knew it. But they'll love to sell the idea of kumbaya, everybody come together, we're all God's children, all that shit. That's why I left Christianity a long time ago. Not that I was ever knee deep in it. I'm just saying I grew up in a Christian household. You know what I mean? But when you really look at it, I'm like, y'all motherfuckers don't operate on that shit. You don't operate on those principles. Most white folks that I've come across are the antithesis of what it truly means to be Christian. It's a bunch of phony, fake ass shit, or their Christianity stops at whiteness. Like that's where it stops. Again, the most segregated hour in American, during America, during a week, month, year, whatever, is 12 o'clock noon on Sunday. That is what it is. They go to different church. Again, like 85% of black people are Christian, right? Due to slavery and all that other shit. But yet we don't even worship white Jesus in the same house. Right? And whose fault is that? That's the subordinate group's fault. Right? That's the group's fault that again, this whole country was set up and designed for white people, and then black people just kind of had to go with the flow. Like white people set the rules, like they set the shit up. But now that you have black people that have awoken and basically saying, you know what, these motherfuckers are fucked up. We need to have our own shit and all this other stuff. Now white people want to project and claim that it's black people who are being separatists. And not just being separatists because we're innately racist, as opposed to us separating because we're trying to, it's in response to white people's racism. You know what I'm saying? Like to even say that black people are racist. I'm like, wasn't the whole civil rights movement because black people were trying to essentially force themselves into integration, right? It was black people who wanted to integrate, right? Because large part because white people controlled all the infrastructure and shit and all the resources and everything else that black people needed access to. But I'm saying it was black people who pushed for integration, right? And that didn't work. We look at our grandparents and parents and whatnot, depending on how old you are. We like, man, these motherfuckers, as Martin Luther King said, talking about James Baldwin. People get the quote wrong because it wasn't actually his quote. He was quoting James Baldwin about, integrating black people into a burning house. Now that black people are like, why are we trying to be around a bunch of motherfuckers that don't want to be around us? Now black people are talking about either reparations for slavery, creating an ethno state or finding some way where, they can be self-sustaining and provide for themselves and live comfortable lifestyles independent of white people who don't want to be around them in the fucking first place. Right? And yet, when black people say that in response to white racism, white people say that black people are the ones that are racist. When it is white people who set up the system of apartheid, it is white people who set up the system of Jim Crow and racism and separate but equal and all that other shit. It was white people who set that shit up. And as we know, separate but equal wasn't separate but equal, right? Because it's always make sure it's separate, but we're gonna be half-assed on the actually making it equal shit. Which is precisely what black people are fucking complaining about. Now that it's not separate, it's like, yeah, motherfucker, it's not separate anymore, but it's still not equal. It's not even fucking close. Hell, when black people try to integrate the schools and shit, what do white people do? Damn, move to the fucking suburbs, right? Go to private schools, gated communities, all that shit. White flight. They were the fuck out. But yet, it's black people. Black people are the racist ones. I mean, look at the movie Black Panther. It's an ethno state. This is racist. Coming to you from red ice. This is racist. If we wanted to have our own ethno state, we're told that we're racist. I mean, shit's not even logical. The response to racism is not racism. It is the response. Like, white people act like black people are supposed to just be sitting around kissing white people's ass, telling them how much they love them and how much they want to be around fucking white people and everything. Black people are so over that shit. They're over that shit. They're like, yo, we want our checks and we get the fuck on. That's what it comes down to. But see, again, we're still going to continue to have these nasty conversations because white people, they don't want to cut them checks. Again, going back to, what Martin Luther King pointed out about desegregation, right? It was all about, black people trying to, gain, their humanity, and their dignity, right? But as soon as you get into the tangibles, as soon as you get into the money, that's when he got the greatest pushback. That's when his ass was killed. See, when you up there talking all that white Jesus shit, everybody come together, hold hands, kumbaya, all that stuff. Yeah. Again, it cost white people nothing to desegregate society. It cost them nothing. But when you start talking about access to resource, capital, banks, education, all these things, housing, job opportunities, all these things that the tangibles, the shit you can see, touch, taste, and smell, that's when they got a problem. That's when it's objections all over the place. That's when they start getting nasty. You see? But yeah, I don't want to. Where am I at? Yeah, 34 minutes. I don't want to make this video too long, but yeah, I sent him back to the lab on that one. So I'll see what he comes up with. You know what I mean? But I was like, motherfucker, you backed yourself into a corner. African Americans are pathologized, but I'm like, you're not going to factor in the fact that we don't have the same history as Africans. You're not gonna factor that in. That Africans don't go through the same psychological freaking brainwashing and whatnot that African Americans go through. You're not gonna point that out and highlight that, right? Again, even when they come here, first generation, second generation, whatever, again, they already have their orientation. It's not to say that African American or the situation once they get here. I've heard many Africans say that once they get here, like their parents just don't get the black experience. But as younger Africans, when they get here and they see how shit's really popping off and how a lot of times, especially if they don't have an accent, like they're treated indistinguishably from African Americans, and they start seeing it like, wait, whoa. And they run back and relay that shit back to their parents, because, a lot of times when you're an older black person, you're not going to really be confronted with certain. It's that the young black person is the black person that is the targeted one. It is the youth that is targeted, because the youth tend to be less tolerant of bullshit. It's like what Paul Mooney said, it's like, it's a different generation. You can tell, our generation or the generation before that, talking about Paul Mooney's age, to get to the back of the bus, and, black folks got to the back of the bus. He was like, you tell our grandkids to go to the back of the bus. Ain't gonna be a bus. Ain't gonna be a bus. Again, as we see with all the protests and the George Floyd shit, ain't gonna be a fucking bus. So, the young generation, they always gotta control and tame the young generation. Yeah, because the young generation comes into a world where, they don't understand the shit. They're like, wait a minute. Again, just like that fucking wolf, ripping the button off and bitch, fuck you, fuck the button and the plank it came on, bitch. Press. You know what I'm saying? Like, again, that whole, trying to, first off, it's an oxymoron to sit there and try to teach black people about Christianity and all this shit with white Jesus and fairness and justice and all that shit. And then you look around and you look at the world and you look at how the shit actually plays out, and you look at, black people disproportionately in poverty, been in poverty since fucking slavery, all this shit. White people are cool with black people and content with black people as long as black people stay in their lane and stay beneath white people and all that shit. Yeah. When you sit there and you look at that, and then you got the Bible in one hand and you got Christianity, sitting there, and then in the other hand, you got fucking reality. You know what I mean? That shit does not fucking compute. It don't compute. That's why I sit there and I look at black Christians like, really, nigga? Like, really? You subscribe to all the, despite all the shit that you see around you, and they got that sweet twinkle of white Jesus in their eye. That hope that, that the Lord's gonna come down. What? So let me get this right. So the people who gave you Christianity, God's gonna come down. Right, this white Jesus is going to come down and punish the white people who gave you Christianity because they're not following the Bible, right? That's what's going to happen, right? Same thing I always say, again, if it was that powerful, and we see white supremacy and white people, for the last several hundred years trying to dominate black people or dominating black people, why would they give you that? If it's that powerful, if God is answering your prayers and listening to black people, and God can look down at earth and see white people and be like, shame on you, and look at black people and be like, poor black people, my suffering children, right? I'm saying even the whole story of the Bible and Jesus and who God's supposed to love more, and supposed to love, those in poverty and those who are pious and those who are dusty and those who don't have shit and those who are sorry and everything else like that, right? That's what God's supposed to love, right? Not the pompous ones, not the arrogant ones, right? Not the ones that just, that smell their own awesomeness, right? That's white folks, right? But yet and still, I ain't seen no lightning bolt. I ain't seen the ground open up. I could see if like coronavirus came through and coronavirus just strictly only affected white people. And then like that was like the plague, like the first wave of some shit. And then say, well, damn, shit, man. I guess I was wrong about Christianity. I guess y'all Negroes was right. You know, I could see if that took place, but that's not what's taking place. Everybody catching coronavirus the same fucking way. I can see if there was a disease like fucking AIDS that only affected white people, and then like, you know, you'd be like, oh, well, yeah, it totally makes sense. That's what the fuck y'all get for all the fucked up shit that you did. You know what I mean? Like I said, you know, all this stuff about, oh, Jesus died for all of our sins, right? All that shit, all that transference of fucking, punishment, oh, Jesus, take all of our sins and die for us, right? But you start talking about reparations for slavery, and most white people, oh, man, I ain't own no slaves. I didn't own any slaves. Why should I have to pay for blah, 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 right? They start going crazy. I'm like, well, I mean, again, like that whole Jesus transference thing, right? So, like, you know, your ancestors did some fucked up shit. So, like, you know, their sins get transferred on to you. No, I don't believe in it. Why? You believe in it when it comes to the curse of Ham and all this other shit, the transference, right? Black people are cursed because they have dark skin, and you go all the way back to Ham and shit. Like, again, transference, right? That's how it works, right? I mean, that's the Bible, right? That's white Jesus and all the shit that y'all talk, right? All that shit that you taught black people, right? But then again, when you apply it back on white people, you know, they lose their shit. Oh no, that's bullshit, man. Again, don't put me in some church or some shit. Like, I'll have white people burning their own Bible. I'll have them cooking that motherfucker. They'll be stomping it out. This book is bullshit. They'll be ripping it up and everything else. Oh, no, don't fuck with me. Oh, I'll mental gymnastic all around that bitch. They'll be trying to read some, it says right here in Corinthians. I'm like, oh, fuck it. Let's go with that. They try that shit with the book of Job and whatnot, and talking about, God was testing Job, and that's what God was doing. And I'm like, well, since the devil likes to cause people to suffer, I'm like, well, what if the devil, due to God's arrogance, what if the devil just wanted to see, didn't want to win the bet? What if the devil just wanted to see Job get fucked up by God? Right? Because I'm saying if he's that much into watching people suffer, like, that was the whole goal. It wasn't really to win the bet. It was just to watch Job suffer. Like, yeah, God, yeah. Job, I bet if you take this away and all that other shit, and take his wife away and his kids away, all that. Right? If I was the devil, that's what I would do. Right? I'd be like, yeah, keep fucking him up. Yeah. Because he's got to feel that shit. Regardless of the fact that you give him back 10 times what he lost, I'm like, doesn't matter. He's still got to feel all that shit. He's got to experience all that fucking suffering. That shit's going to be burned into his memory and whatnot. You see? All that shit he fucking went through. Right? I mean, hell, you got soldiers that come back from freaking war and they got PTSD. They can't even handle that shit. They go off and blow their head off. You have more soldiers that have freaking died from suicide than have died, overseas, freaking fighting in combat. That's how much it fucks them up. So you don't think all that shit, all the boils and everything that God was doing to Job, you don't think that negatively affected Job? See, nobody dies into all that shit. They just tell you the allegory of the story, and then you just supposed to like fucking go off and just go, oh, yeah, that makes sense. Again, people they don't want to think about shit. But anyway, that's my video. I'm done. I'm going to go and eat some of this delicious food. So, I love this weather. It's like nice and cool. It's not like too hot, not too cold. I love it. But anyway, that's all I got to say. That's my video. SWP out.